For generations, Earth had been forgotten a small, blue planet tucked away on the edge of the Orion Arm, long considered irrelevant in galactic affairs. To the galactic Concord, Earth was a non-factor, mentioned only in faded records, tucked away under decades of bureaucracy and overlooked systems. It had once appeared in wartime files. During a long-ago conflict, no one remembered clearly, but after that, Earth simply faded into the background of the stars. It had no known fleet, no active communication, and no influence in interstellar politics. Most believed it had destroyed itself, or slipped into chaos and decay, like many primitive civilizations before it. So when the mining colony of Thalax IV went completely silent, its workers, machines, and entire infrastructure vanishing without a trace, the incident was brushed off as another pirate raid or local anomaly. But when investigators arrived, they didn't find wreckage or signs of battle. Instead, they detected strange energy readings, faint, precise, and cold. The kind of signal that shouldn't exist, because it belonged to a technology not seen in the galaxy for centuries. One senior analyst recognized it immediately, but only because he had once decrypted a locked Terran data file, one sealed after the last war. That detail sent a quiet ripple of unease through the Concord. The council met in emergency session, uncertain how to proceed. Most members mocked the idea that Earth, of all planets, could be involved. Yet protocol demanded investigation. A small scout fleet was dispatched to survey nearby systems, their orders simple: observe, document, and return. No one expected what happened next. Light years away, deep under the icy crust of Antarctica, in a chamber untouched by sunlight for over 200 years, a silent system stirred. A thin pulse of blue light ran across ancient panels. The words, Protocol Aegis, Level 1, blinked softly to life. All across the Earth, in old listening stations and hidden bunkers, buried systems flickered on. Their activation was so quiet that even Earth's own governments didn't notice, because these systems didn't answer to governments. They answered to something older. At the edge of the solar system, far beyond Neptune, a ring of satellites that didn't appear on any. Registry began to shift. Their camouflage shimmered and then dropped completely as they turned their sensors outward, locking on to a single set of approaching signals. They transmitted nothing, moved nothing, but for the first time in generations, they began to observe. The data they collected was streamed to black box servers beneath the Pacific Ocean, where it was parsed by an AI system simply named Echo, one of the last creations from the final war. Echo didn't panic. It calculated. It compared. It remembered. The signals from the scouting fleet matched a pattern from long ago, and with quiet precision, Echo activated a tier of command known as Watchlight. In an abandoned orbital platform drifting above the dark side of the moon, emergency lights blinked on. A hatch opened, revealing rows of sleeping drones. Below Earth's crust, old weapons reconnected to a network no longer taught in schools, no longer listed in archives, no longer remembered by the public. They weren't meant to be used unless the stars came looking again, and now they had. On board the lead Concord scout ship, the officers reviewed their data with increasing confusion. A space near Earth seemed empty. No ships, no energy spikes, no signs of civilization that matched modern standards. Yet their sensors kept returning anomalies, gravitational ripples, signal ghosts, and strange spatial static that didn't match any natural cause. One officer proposed a theory cloaking tech, but not the kind used by pirates or smugglers, something far more advanced. The idea was dismissed until another ship in the formation lost contact for 3 full minutes before reappearing with no memory of the interruption. That's when panic set in. Back at Concord Command, the fleet's reports caused alarm. Ships were advised to hold position, but before the new orders arrived, the scouting fleet experienced what their logs later called a black second, a moment of total silence across every system, as if the universe had blinked. In that second, Earth watched, not with eyes, but with intent. In the black space between stars, something moved quietly, slowly, not yet seen, but no longer asleep. The time for silence was ending. Earth, forgotten in the fog of time and ignorance, was waking up, and the galaxy, whether ready or not, was about to remember what it once chose to forget. The Concorde fleet, still confident in its superiority, continued its cautious approach toward Earth's region of space, convinced that the strange readings and the disappearance of one scout ship were nothing more than environmental interference or a pirate trick. But with every passing hour, more anomalies crept into their system's navigational beacons, started to glitch. Internal clocks slipped out of sync, and long-range scanners returned either static or false readings that changed each time they were rechecked. Yet the fleet's commanders pushed forward, their minds too conditioned by centuries of dominance to consider that a true unknown might be watching them from the shadows. Until one by one, ships reported communication loss with neighboring vessels, not due to attacks or system failures, but something stranger, ships vanishing from sensors, even when they were visible by eye, vanishing like ghosts, their signatures simply collapsing into silence. And then, just as fear began to outweigh pride, the sky changed. Not gradually, not with warnings, but with one silent, synchronized flash across the sector, as dozens of vessels materialized from nothing, appearing instantly and without a ripple of warp or distortion, the kind of arrival that defied every known method of movement. And there they were, Earth's fleet, not above Earth, but already scattered and positioned across key jump lanes, asteroid corridors, and outer ring systems, surrounding the Concorde forces without firing a shot, each ship black as the void, their hulls smooth and curved in unnatural ways, built with angles and lines that bent logic and hurt the eyes when stared at too long, as if the geometry itself refused to conform to the rest of the universe, and their surfaces shimmered with shifting energy fields that absorbed light, signals and scans alike, making them not just invisible, but undetectable. And the weapons mounted on their hulls were just as strange, no visible turrets or launchers, only glowing patterns that pulsed slowly, hinting at power that no Concorde engineer could identify, let alone counter. And in that moment, every Concorde ship halted, suspended in the cold of space, as the officers and captains tried to process the impossible. They had been surrounded before they even knew there was a threat, and the fleet that had done it belonged to the very planet they believed lost, primitive, or dead, a fleet that had not issued demands, threats, or broadcasts, but had simply appeared, and in that chilling silence, the realization spread. This was not a defense force caught unprepared. This was a calculated unveiling, a message delivered without words. And while the Concorde ships held their formation internally, chaos began to spread as analysts failed to match the Terran vessels to any historical database. And the fleet's command I faltered while trying to plot engagement strategies against an enemy that didn't fit the rules, didn't appear on targeting systems, and didn't behave in expected patterns. Because these ships weren't reacting to the Concorde, they were already positioned for every possibility, each one having chosen its place long before the Council ships even entered the region. And then, as if to punctuate the moment, all Concorde systems flickered for exactly 3 seconds, during which time no crew member could move, speak, or control their ship. And when systems returned, nothing had changed, but the terror had sunk in, because now they understood. Earth had never stopped watching, never stopped building, and never once surrendered its place in the galaxy. It had simply hidden in a way no other species could, behind cloaked satellites, in deep space stations, and within layers of data disguised as natural noise. And now It had returned not with fanfare, but with purpose, showing the Concord that it was already present in places they considered secure, already prepared for threats they hadn't even voiced. And still, Earth remained silent. No leader came forward, no declaration made, no blaring alarms or heroic speeches, just a cold, perfect silence from a shadow armada that had rewritten the rules of engagement without firing a single shot. And for the first time since the Council's formation, a fleet that did not belong to them held the upper hand across an entire sector, not through numbers, but through patience, preparation, and the one thing no Concord strategist ever accounted for: Earth's refusal to be predictable. As confusion and tension thickened within the frozen Concord fleet, Command made the only move left that didn't risk destruction. They opened a diplomatic channel on all known frequencies, broadcasting peaceful intentions, requesting clarification, offering negotiation. But what came in return was not a threat, not an ultimatum, but a calm and controlled voice that echoed through every Concord ship in perfect clarity, introducing itself not with arrogance, but with precision. Admiral Elara Wren, commanding officer of the Terran Sovereign Fleet, she said, and with that, the illusion of Earth's weakness shattered completely, as she explained that Earth had never vanished, had never been lost, but had instead made a choice to step back after the last great galactic war nearly wiped out multiple civilizations. A war caused not by Earth, but by a race of unstable experiments and unchecked technologies that spiraled out of control while the Concord tried to consolidate power. And when Earth saw what that war could become, it had withdrawn, sealing itself off from the chaos, hiding not because it was afraid, but because it understood that its continued presence might trigger worse outcomes. So instead, Earth had chosen silence, burying its strength, hiding its fleets, erasing its history from known archives, and becoming nothing more than a forgotten footnote, all to give the galaxy a chance to heal without fear of its return. But that silence, Elara said, was never meant to be permanent. It was always conditional. And when the colony of Thalax IV was destroyed by an energy spike matching Concord's Forbidden's prototype weapon, the same one Earth had warned against centuries ago, it became clear that the cycle was repeating, and Earth could no longer remain quiet, not because it wanted power, but because it saw the danger that came with unchecked ambition. And the voice of Admiral Wren, though steady and respectful, held a weight that silenced entire command bridges as she laid out the facts. Earth had been monitoring for over 100 years, using cloaked satellites embedded near Concord lanes, reading military data, tracking weapon development, and storing enough evidence to show that the destruction of Thalax IV was not an accident, but the result of Forbidden's testing, resurrected from old plans Earth had buried for a reason. And now, with proof of history repeating, Earth had returned, not with fleets of invasion, but with fleets of balance, designed not to conquer, but to remind the galaxy that actions have consequences. And as her message ended, every Concord leader watching from distant capitals felt the weight of a truth they had refused to believe, that their intelligence had failed them completely, that their sensors and records had seen only what Earth allowed them to see, that the stories of Earth's fall were never real, just carefully placed myths, and that while they ruled and expanded, Earth had been building not just ships or weapons, but strategy, redundancy, and silence, mastering technologies they barely understood, choosing restraint over dominance. And now, having seen the same dangers rising again, humanity stepped forward not out of pride, but responsibility, showing a galaxy that forgot its own past, that Earth had never gone away. It had simply watched from the dark and waited for the moment when watching was no longer enough, even after Admiral Elara Wren's clear message echoed across the stars. There were still those within the Concord who refused to accept Earth's return as anything but a threat to their long-held power. One such faction, operating under the old and secretive directive known only as Dominion Path, decided to respond not with words, but with force. Believing Earth's presence in deep space to be a bluff, they launched a covert strike against one of the Terran forward stations positioned near the edge of the Dravic Belt, intending to send a message of defiance before Council politics shifted too far in Earth's favor. But what the Dominion Path failed to understand was that Earth's forward stations were not outposts. They were traps designed to expose exactly this kind of aggression. Before the attackers even exited their slipstreams, Earth's predictive systems flagged the assault based on encrypted communications intercepted hours earlier. The response was already prepared. As the Concorde fleet dropped from warp, they were met not with open combat, but with silence followed by the sudden, precise deactivation of every weapon and propulsion system aboard their ships. Terran drones, operating autonomously and at faster-than-light computation speeds, disarmed the fleet in less than 60 seconds. No shots fired, no casualties, just silence and then paralysis. Within the hour, Earth performed a coordinated data strike. Thousands of encrypted pulses set across all major Concorde systems, each carrying full documentation, names, logs, private transmissions, schematics, and flight plans. The data exposed Dominion Path's secret weapons programs, their failed experiments with unstable singularity engines, and detailed logs of efforts to suppress internal resistance through false flag operations. But that was not all. Earth's data drops included surveillance footage, records from old Concorde trials thought erased, and even communication recordings between council members plotting to provoke Earth into open war for political leverage. The shock hit like a wave. Entire star systems went silent as the truths unfolded. Some Concorde leaders tried to deny the information, calling it fabrication, but within hours, whistleblowers from inside Concorde ranks stepped forward, confirming everything. Earth didn't ask for punishment or tribute, it asked for reform. It demanded transparency, honesty, and structural dismantling of the corrupted inner circles that had brought the galaxy to the brink more than once. In places like Valari Prime and Orcish Outpost, local governments who had long felt pushed aside by Concorde control began transmitting open support for Earth's terms. Neutral planets once loyal only to their own survival now pledged alliance. Because of fear, but because of what Earth represented: order with restraint, power without chaos. The Terran Sovereign Fleet, now known across galactic networks simply as the Watch, continued its silent patrols, always visible but never provocative. It didn't blockade, invade, or intimidate. Instead, it positioned itself where peace was weakest and waited, offering a better alternative through precision and clarity. Even former enemies of Earth long dormant and forgotten began to reconsider. The way Earth handled its first retaliation stunned the galaxy. No civilians harmed, no cities burned. Just clean surgical force followed by undeniable truth. And in that display, it became clear that Earth's strength was never just in its ships or weapons. It was in its ability to strike only where needed, to reveal only what was necessary, and to remain steady in the face of blind aggression. Across the stars, messages began flowing from independent systems and private sectors. Requests for negotiation, offers for alliance, invitations for dialogue. Earth's diplomats, trained in silence for generations, answered each message with clarity and fairness. There was no arrogance, only intent. Earth had not returned as a conqueror. It had returned as a reminder. A reminder that in a galaxy teetering on corruption and decay, power does not always mean destruction. Sometimes the greatest threat to tyranny is not rebellion, but restraint. And Earth had mastered both. In the weeks that followed Earth's quiet but overwhelming display of power, the galactic Concorde faced a reckoning unlike any in its long and complicated history. And though the surface of the conflict had been calm, with no planets burned or cities destroyed, the truth beneath had cracked the foundation of the Council's authority, exposing layers of deception, hidden agendas, and abuses that no longer could be ignored. Internal factions broke away, old alliances collapsed, and leadership that once ruled by tradition found itself replaced by voices demanding change. And through all of this, Earth remained silent, not out of pride, but by choice. When the new Concord Assembly was formed, Earth was offered a seat not beneath the old power structure, but equal to it, with full rights, full voice, and full responsibility. Admiral Elara Wren returned only once, delivering a clear message to the gathered representatives that Earth did not seek to lead the galaxy, nor dominate it, but it would never again allow silence to be mistaken for weakness. A new order took shape, based not on control, but on mutual deterrence and shared knowledge, and slowly, the galaxy began to understand the true lesson of Earth's return, not that it was the most dangerous power in the stars, but that it had been willing to disappear to prevent war, only rising again when history threatened to repeat its worst mistakes. As peace settled over the star lanes, Earth's fleet began to disappear once more, not because the mission was over, but because the point had been made. One by one, the great Terran warships recloaked, retreating beyond known space to stations, hidden in the deep black, where no signal reached and no eye could follow. There were no parades, no monuments, only quiet withdrawals and encrypted beacons pulsing in the dark. Yet, across thousands of systems, stories began to spread tales of black ships that moved without sound, of weapons that never missed, and of a fleet that appeared from nowhere and vanished again like a ghost. On academy walls and in military training manuals, one phrase began to appear simple, final, and impossible to ignore: never assume Earth is gone. It was a warning written in every language, taught to every new officer, whispered in every war room, and remembered by every strategist. Because even though Earth no longer sat at the center of the galactic map, everyone now knew that in the silence between stars, the Terran sovereign fleet was still watching, still waiting, and still prepared. And with that understanding came something the galaxy had not known in centuries: not fear, but balance. For once, all powers moved carefully, not because they were being forced, but because they finally understood that peace was no longer a luxury. It was a condition maintained by trust, precision, and the unspoken knowledge that if that balance ever broke again, Earth would return, and when it did, everything would change once more. Just like the last time, when they decloaked, and the galaxy changed forever.